What would you do if I told you that you're probably not getting lossless audio on Apple Music on your Apple TV unless you follow the 4 steps in this video? Hey folks, I'm Gene Delasello with Audioholics. So I want to talk to you Apple TV users, and I want to make sure if you're a music listener like me, I want to make sure that you're getting the very best sound quality. And if you don't follow these 4 steps in this video, you likely are not. So I put together a little slide presentation, and you'll have access to this if you're a Patreon. If you're a member of our Patreon channel, the presentation will be there as well. But you can follow along here. Here I am holding an Apple TV. Now, I do recommend if you get an Apple TV, I would tell you guys to get a Gen 3. I mean, Gen 2 is still great. Gen 2 still supports spatial audio for Apple Music, but Gen 3 is even faster, more memory, and they're relatively inexpensive. I'll put some affiliate links down below. But let's go over this now. So what I want to talk to you about is what is lossless audio and why should you care? So Apple Music gives you 2 different options. They have what defaults as a lossy codec, the AAC, which stands for Advanced Audio Coding. It's actually a really good lossy codec. It's better than MP3, but it's still not true bit-to-bit perfect like you would get from a CD or from the master source file. And that's why we have ALAC on Apple Music, and that's called Apple Lossless Audio Codec. It yields a larger file size, a larger streaming footprint, and it's bit-to-bit perfect before and after compression. And this is what you want to make sure that your Apple TV is set for on Apple Music app. So if you go into the audio settings in your Apple Music app, you'll notice as soon as when you get an Apple TV and you plug it in, it'll default on the AAC 256 kilobit option, not the lossless option. And I was quite surprised by that because it was probably a few months listening on Apple Music. I didn't even know. I mean, it actually does sound really good. So it tricked me. But once I switched it to lossless, I did hear an increase in dynamic range in the music, and the sound quality got even better. And that's why I think it's important to do this video. So here we go. We talk again about the AAC versus ALAC. You can read that here. I don't have to read every little thing on this slide to you guys. So step 1 on getting lossless audio for Apple Music on your Apple TV is make sure you have an Ethernet connection of at least 100 megabits or greater. I know the temptation to use wireless is great, but if you could get Ethernet plugged into your Apple TV, you're going to get much better sound quality and video quality. So that's the step 1 that I recommend to you guys. Step 2 is you have to go in and make sure your Apple TV is at its latest firmware version. At the time of doing this video, you can see the firmware version that we're using. So just go in and update the software. That's a quick thing, take maybe a minute or 2. Sometimes it can take longer depending on how long it's been since you've had an update. Now, step 3, you have to actually go into the settings menu on your Apple TV. You can't go right into Apple Music and do the setting change, which is kind of ridiculous, but that's how Apple ecosystem works. So you go and you hit the settings button. And you can see again, when you go into settings, you want to select lossless audio quality. Again, it starts out as high quality AAC 256, but as you guys know, as we showed you in previous slides, that is not lossless. It's not bit for bit perfect. So here's how you get to this screen. So the first thing you do is you select, after you go to settings, you go to system, then you go to apps, then you go to the music app, and then you go into the audio quality. So there's really, I mean, there's 4 menus that you got to go into after you get into the setting to get to this. So it's not very intuitive. It's well hidden, and Apple's kind of notorious for hiding things like this. So just pause for a minute and look at this. Go into your Apple TV and make this change. And you can see now we went from the high quality setting to the lossless setting, which is a much better setting if you're really serious about high fidelity audio for 2-channel listening music. So the key points here is the lossless setting only applies to Apple Music. You must be an Apple Music subscriber to enable this option. So you got to pay the monthly fee like you would with any subscription, whether it's Tidal or any of the other music services like Amazon HD or Spotify or anything like that. Now, the max bit and depth and sampling rate for Apple TV is 24-bit, 48 kilohertz. I know there's going to be some people in the comments down below saying, oh my God, it limits the sampling rate to 48K. I'm going to throw this thing out. It's not high fidelity. That couldn't be further from the truth. There's nothing wrong with a 48 kilohertz sampling rate. In fact, if you're using any room correction system, whether it's Dirac, Odyssey, pretty much all the major room correction systems, with the exception, I think, of Anthem, Arc, Genesis, and YPOW, they reduced the sampling rate. They downsample to 48 kilohertz. Base management systems sample down to 48 kilohertz. It's not a big deal. That's plenty sufficient sampling rate. You're not going to hear a difference going from 48 kilohertz to 96. What is important is you get the full resolution. So if there is a 24-bit recording, the Apple TV supports that. And there you go right there. This is what it supports. Now, I want to make it clear, this is only for 2-channel music for the Apple Music app. It doesn't apply to spatial audio on the Apple Music app. That's still lossy. That's still Dolby Atmos over Dolby Digital Plus. And the same thing whether you're using Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus. They're all lossy streaming. Right now, as the time of making this video, there's no way to get lossless Atmos over a streaming device that I'm aware of. Unfortunately, it's not there yet. And this only works for wired connections via HDMI. So you got to plug an HDMI cable from your Apple TV into your AVR. And the headphone connected via Bluetooth connections will only get the lossy AAC codec. So you're not going to get that kind of level of fidelity if you're using wireless Bluetooth. So this is a wire connection plugged into your AVR, 2-channel music. So I had Teo look at this. Teo Nikolakis, one of our prominent reviewers on Audioholics, and he's a huge Apple person. And he's got the Anthem AVM90, which he's in the process of reviewing. So you're going to be seeing that review real soon. And I had him analyze on his AVM90 the signal that was coming out of the Apple TV. And sure enough, he saw a 48 kilohertz sampling rate. Now, most of the content he was listening to was actually in 16-bit. So not everything is in 24-bit, and 16-bit is fine. That's Redbook. That's, max resolution of CD, and there are some great sounding CDs out there. So that's it. My impressions when I went from the lossy to the lossless, I noticed that the levels dropped a little bit in output, but the dynamic range increased. So when I listened to music with a lot of dynamic range, the softer passages were softer, the louder passages were louder. There was just more range in the sound, and that just gives you better fidelity overall. It's definitely worth spending the time to do this. So if you guys have an Apple TV, give me some comments down below. Was your Apple TV set to lossy and you didn't realize it until this video? If so, I'm glad that we're able to help you guys get better sound quality. And if you don't have an Apple TV, I do recommend getting one. It's one of my favorite streaming platforms. I use it for most of my listening of music, and I do listen to SACDs, I listen to vinyl, but I really love Apple Music, and I'm not a paid person for Apple. I just have a subscription and I like the service. I will put some affiliate links for Apple TVs. If you guys don't have one, I'll put our Amazon links in there, and I appreciate that because you guys support the channel when you buy through our affiliate links. And I wanted to tell you guys, until the end of October, we are running this kick-ass Klipsch RP1600 SW subwoofer giveaway. This is sponsored by Audio Advice. This is a 16-inch sub. We did a review on this thing. It's a powerhouse. It meets our extreme Bassaholic room size rating. So you've got maybe a couple more weeks to enter into this contest. I'll put links in the video description below so you guys can enter. Now, let me be clear. This is for USA residents only. Nobody's going to ask you to pay for shipping. So if you see any comments down below saying you won this, you didn't. Those are scammers. Avoid the scammers. If you won while entering this contest, you will get an official email from an Audioholics email address contacting you and asking you for your address. There'll be never a charge for shipping for you guys. Again, this is for USA residents. So I do recommend you check out the contest, check out a review of the Klipsch subwoofer down below. And don't forget about our Patreon channel at patreon.com/Audioholics. We appreciate your support. You get direct access to me if you want to suggest video topics. And until next time, my friends, keep listening.